So Daniel, you're last on the this panel here. You are representing the American business part of the U.S. economy. Uh, Before we get into a couple of questions I have for you, let's talk about your background and how you use ULTRALOQs in your business.
So my background is electrical engineer, and I started owning property in 1980, residential property, and I graduated into commercial starting in 2013, and I really prefer commercial to residential. No more tenants and the three T's, which I won't say what they are, but so yeah, triple net commercial is the way to go, and I've been using smart technology for many, many years, back when smart thermostats, and the first smart thermostat that was connected to the internet was Prolipics. This was in Andover, I think, Andover, Massachusetts, and it didn't have an Ethernet plug, so you actually had to plug in the wires, all 8 wires, into the right terminals in order to get it to work right. And it's a legacy company. I don't think they're not produced anymore, but it had a great UI. I could see it had remote sensors. So in a residential property I had in New York City, I had 3 tenants, and I was able to have sensors in each person's apartment, so they couldn't tell me, and I had to pay the heat there. So they would, the ploy would be, oh, it's too cold, or it's this, that, and the other thing. So I was able to see for any particular time frame, a day, a week, a month, what the temperature was in the apartments, and if they said it wasn't, I could prove it was. This is what it was. So I don't even know that anybody's smart thermostat, Ecobee, maybe does that, but anyway, I got into smart locks with Yale before u-tec was here, and I had some locks that were outside, and you just couldn't trust them. They were maybe IP67, but if you had the ones with the keypad, and if UV got into it, it would destroy the keypad, and they weren't guaranteeing that rain and snow. So when u-tec came with IP65, one of the first places I put it at a building in New Hampshire. And that's a pretty severe environment where you go down to -30 and up to 95 in the summer with great high humidity. And that lock was on there for, I don't know, 10 years. It never failed environmentally. So it was it proves u-tec can take a beating, take a licking, and keep on ticking. And I've used u-tec in all those outdoor environments, and some of the new companies coming online, like I think it's Silphi or whatever. They make junk because it's not non-ferrous, it's ferrous, so it's going to rust inside. Anyway, what I need in my latest shopping center, I have 48,000 square feet and 32 tenant spaces. Some tenants share, so there's more than one unit, and so 32 1,500 square foot spaces, all with storefront locks. So you've all been to commercial shopping centers where I think there's no automation. So everybody has keys that they have to put in. There's no keyless. And there's a few companies that are doing this, like Alarm Lock, which is very expensive. Starts at $500, goes up to $1,000. This is a NAPCO company. And there's some Chinese startups that they have no track record. And one thing I'm trying to get u-tec interested in is to do commercial and go into B2B versus B2C, which is what they're in right now. So I'm talking to Clark about that in detail. I think it's a great opportunity because u-tec is known for price performance, which is very, very important. And none of the other guys like Yale and Kwikset, maybe not so much. u-tec is certainly, I believe, ahead of them for price performance. What they're not necessarily is their integration. So, for instance, you can see, I remember, I use Android and I use widgets a lot. And I remember on some locks I took out, I would see I would have widgets for each lock, and it was gold, it was locked, and if it was gray, it was unlocked, and it was interactive. It would happen instantaneously. So I could be 1,000 miles away, and I could look at a panel and see 10 locks and see which ones were locked and which ones weren't. And that was through Smart Things, I believe. Unfortunately, maybe with u-tec's new platform for u-tec locks, not the other guys, with Smart Things, you were able to tie different companies. So you're able to tie Yale and Kwikset, but not u-tec. There were some other ones. So I need to be able to see the status of all my locks, especially picture this shopping center with all these tenants, 25 active tenants, and if I had keyless on all the doors, I want to know the status of it by just looking at one screen and see what's open and what's not. There's one way to do it now, which is Home Assistant. Home Assistant, or whether any of you have used Home Assistant, it ties 1,000 companies together, all under one roof. But it's very geeky, and it's open interface UI, but it's not for the technologically faint of heart. You've got to get into it, and you could spend. I don't have enough time to learn all this. Some people could really get into this. You could do all kinds of nuances, and you can see, for instance, you could have a panel where you can see the battery level of each lock, so you know which batteries are going to fail and which ones need to be replaced. You can see the status of each lock. You can see any different parameter on the lock. You talk about Matter. For someone like me that has thousands of dollars invested in legacy technology, from surveillance cameras to different types of sensors, to smart locks, to thermostats, I'm not going to upgrade all my equipment. It costs thousands of dollars, if I understand correctly. Matter, you have to update. You need to update all your equipment. It's not going to work with legacy stuff. So that's a huge investment for people like me, and it makes me reluctant to do that versus something like Home Assistant. Home Assistant, though, you need a dedicated server at each site. And they make it simple because you use a souped-up Raspberry Pi, which is, for the geeks, this is one of the classic circuit board with a processor. And so it's a souped-up version, and it needs to be online 24/7 so that this technology works. But once you got it in, it really works well. I guess I need to have. Another thing in my shopping center, I have all these tenants with their own Wi-Fi, and I can't ask the tenant, "Can I use your Wi-Fi for the u-tec lock?" No. And then Zigbee and Z-Wave, they don't go far enough. So the only thing that goes far enough is LoRa. And Yolink, John Zhu, he started this company about 6 years ago. He's fabulously successful with both. He does smart water. So actually, you can have a sensor on the floor, and if your sensor gets wet, it's going to shut off the water to the house. And he has smart thermostats. He's got limited smart locks, and all kinds of different sensors. He's using LoRa, and I was using it in my shopping center in Orlando, which had was about 300, 400 feet long, and 2 cement block walls, and the LoRa went through the whole thing, went all the way to the end with just one hub. So it really works for great distances very effectively. So another thing I'm proposing to u-tec is, in addition to having the Wi-Fi bridges, and they have a LoRa bridge, because for applications like mine, it would go much further, and you don't have to bother different people for their credentials. You can just do it on one fell swoop. So it makes things much simpler. Any questions for me?
We're going to have audience questions in a few moments. But last question I want to ask you, Daniel, because you cover a lot of great territory. It's really interesting that the smart lock category, has really been much of a B2C type of phenomenon. But obviously, you're using it now in a B2B configuration. You talked a little bit about, some of the challenges that if you're in a mall, for example, every mall, store owner may have their own Wi-Fi network, and it becomes.
When I bought this property
Yep.
a few months ago, they left 30 sets of keys. Imagine 30 sets of keys on the floor in the upstairs utility room, and the code didn't work for the lock, and I had to break into the utility room in order to get to the keys, and then half of them didn't work anyway. Imagine, this is impossible. There's got to be a better way.
No, that's true, and there's capabilities like Amazon Sidewalk, which is kind of had a bit of a rocky start, but that kind of tries to solve that problem. There are other capabilities with smart. There's now different broadband service providers are implementing a smart cities concept where you have Wi-Fi coverage in entire locality, which makes things a lot easier in terms of controlling different business devices. But that was a great perspective, and I really think that companies like ULTRALOQ have a humongous opportunity, frankly, in the business, in the B2B space.